Welcome to A Word for Wednesday. Thank you so much for joining us. Each Wednesday you will find Boggs Family Ministries is here with our host, Davy Boggs. Having you along with us is a wonderful addition. Now, let's enjoy together A Word for Wednesday.
Thank you, Brother Devin, and thank you for joining us on A Word for Wednesday. It's a little overcast outside. Rain is on the way. Wind is blowing. Road noise. Generator running over here. Love bugs everywhere. If you've never been in the South in love bug season, you don't really know how to hate bugs. Love bugs everywhere. I'm sure you're going to see them. Perfect time to do A Word for Wednesday. Thank you for joining us. Do you ever feel like your life is falling apart and there's nothing you can do about it? Sometimes it seems on those difficult days that it seems to suggest that God is not being fair with us, or that God is not paying attention. What in the world is going on? Why all the trauma and the drama? So what do we do in times like these? I do two things. First, I try to put things into perspective. And I do that by asking three questions. First question, are we all still alive? Second question, are we likely to live all the way through this? Third question, do we have all our fingers, toes, and limbs attached? If the answer is yes to all three of those questions, then I need to dial down the panic a little bit. I need to take a deep breath. If I'm not having to call 911 and we're not all bleeding, or some of us bleeding, then I just pull the stress back a little bit and slow down the panic a notch or two. You see, I'm really good at panic. So if I can eliminate the hysteria, then maybe we've got a chance to survive this unexpected dilemma that we're in. So that's the first thing I do. Try to put it in perspective so I can dial down the stress. Secondly, I start looking closely at the mess that I find around me, because God has taught me that often the solutions and the answers that I need are probably within arm's reach, right in the midst of the chaos and the confusion. This was brought home to me several years ago with an everyday crisis. Not a major crisis, an everyday crisis that happened to us. And I think about it often, and I think it merits retelling here today on A Word for Wednesday. We came back to the Boggs mobile. We had owned it a couple of years. I point over here because it's sitting right here to the right of me, out of camera. We'd owned it a couple of years. It was 2010. We came back to the bus after lunch and unlocked the bolt lock, pulled the latch. The latch pulled out, but the door didn't open. And so that had never happened before. There's just nothing to it. It's just a little latch. So we made sure the bolt lock was open, but we couldn't get the latch open. So I was able to take the latch apart and get in there and find a way to pop the door open. And I rigged a little temporary thing to where we could open and shut the door, because you can't get that latch at Walmart or at Lowe's. And I was going to be in Nashville the next week, and so I determined I would deal with it when I got there. I got to Prevo, Nashville several days later. I took the inside panel of the door off, and sure enough, the latch was busted. The weld was broken. It looked like it had been broken and repaired before. I went inside and talked to the parts guy there, and he said, yes, there's been a redesign on that. That was a faulty latch. I have one in stock. So I bought that latch and went outside. Now, I am terribly mechanically uninclined, but the door was apart and we needed the latch. So I just dove in. I think the girls went to town and I just went to working on it. At some point, I needed a tool that I thought I had inside the bus. We have what we call a junk drawer that has a little bit of everything, and I was pretty sure that tool was in there. At that time, we had a cardboard box that sat down in the in the junk drawer, and I was pulling that cardboard box out. I got it out away from the drawer, and it fell apart in my hands. And all the junk in the junk drawer went everywhere. About 8 or 10 feet this way on the wood floor, about 8 or 10 feet this way on the wood floor, and then down the steps and out the door onto the parking lot. It made a mess. Do you have one of those drawers? Junk drawers. All the contents all over the floor in that box, and now all over the floor there were wire nuts, staples, tape, electrical tape, screws, nuts, washers, screwdrivers, pliers, tape measure, hammer, rope, flashlights, wire ties, batteries, and on and on and on. And all of it is all over the floor. You get the idea. I didn't have time to clean up a mess. I was already under stress, working against daylight, trying to get this done because we've got to have this door working before we leave later that night or early that next morning. And so I found the tool that I was looking for, went down and finished what I was doing at the latch at that time. I came down to the final part of attaching and getting this latch working. It was a little bitty nut way back in there. I could barely reach it to start it, and I could finger tighten it, but it needed to be tight with that lock washer or it was going to come off, and I would be back into that position again in a few days without a nut. It would be lost somewhere down in the door. And I didn't have a tool to get it. I had small wrenches, thin wrenches, but none of them were small enough to grab that nut. I didn't have long-nosed, needle-nosed pliers at that time, and I'm not sure they would have worked. But I remembered something. In the contents of that box being spilled all over the floor, I remembered seeing a small crescent wrench. And so I went up in there and searched through that stuff, and there it was. There's that small crescent wrench. You see how small that is? And it was the perfect tool for the job. Now I had to take it around a rod and out this way. It wouldn't go straight in. Put it on that little nut and turn it about 1/8 of a turn over and over and over until I had it tight. Now somebody gave me that wrench in a church as part of an object lesson. I don't remember what the object lesson was at this moment. And I had never used that wrench. I didn't have any idea where it was. I didn't even know I still owned it. But it was in that junk drawer. It was a perfect tool for the job, and I would have never found it without the mess of the box falling apart. Are you following me? This is the punchline. This is the payoff. I could not have finished the latch without the box falling apart and everything scattering all over the floor. Suddenly, the broken box didn't seem all that terrible. The shambles made sense. The wreckage produced the right wrench. A light bulb came on in my little bird brain, and all the mess had meaning. Now, I readily admit this was not a life and death situation. This was not real trouble, not like the trouble you may be having. But it was the trouble that I was having that day. And so it was troubling to me. I could not have finished my task for the day without the box falling apart and the junk scattering in every direction, revealing exactly what I needed. Now, that speaks to me. Try to apply it to a situation in your life. I have applied it to many situations that are much more difficult than a latch, much less understandable than a broken latch. And so the next time you feel like crying out loud or even quitting when life falls apart, stop, gain some perspective, and look closely at the pieces scattered about. You may find the very thing you need is waiting right there among the scrambled contents of that broken box. Broken boxes, jumbled contents, inconvenient messes may be the exact thing you need to solve your pressing problem. By the way, I did get the latch fixed that day, and you probably will too. That's our word for Wednesday. See you next week.
That is our word for Wednesday. We are so glad that you've spent a few minutes with us today. If you've been touched by today's episode, please share it with your friends and family. We welcome your questions or comments below or by email. You can find the email address in the description, along with a link to mile markers, the website for Boggs Family Ministries. Also, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. Thank you again, and we hope to see you next Wednesday.